to have a look at self-directed writing and the difference between self-directed writing and mind regurgitative writing, wherein your writing purely consists of and exists as regurgitating your thought patterns and reaction habits without any actual insight or understanding or realization that come through within and through your writing, and thus render your writing useless, because within such mind writing, all that you're in essence doing is feeding your mind consciousness system a different way, wherein you are validating and justifying and feeding your current starting point or definition of who you are, how you are, and what you are within and as the mind consciousness system. And therefore, to give some clarity, perspective, insight, and understanding in ensuring that when you write, you're writing self-directively, that while and within your writing, you are writing out your mind pattern that it is that you're facing, and at the same time as writing it out, you are standing up within it, so that your writing becomes an actual self-assistance and self-support from that perspective, not a mind support or assistance, but an actual self-support and assistance. Self-support and assistance meaning that you see, realize, and understand while and through and within your writing what it is that you're accepting and allowing. And while you're writing out, let's say, the problem, you're at the same time seeing the solution, and within that can direct yourself within your self-forgiveness most effectively, and then of course within your practical living application as your living correction of this point that you're facing within yourself, so that your writing becomes a point where you face yourself and stand up within yourself at the same time. So to assist and support with this point is to have a look at your self-experience while you're writing or before you're writing. Be very attentive in terms of your self-experience in the moment when you're sitting before you're writing. That you do not accept or allow yourself to write within and as energy, because the mind consciousness system, within the mind consciousness system, energy is its main source with which it leads you into and as various constructs or patterns within and as itself, wherein if you accept and allow yourself to participate and thus get lost within energy, it is very easy for you to get lost within and as the thoughts or the patterns or the habits or the constructs or the systems that's related to that energy. And then before you know it, you have accepted and you allowed yourself to be directed by the mind into and as various points of thinking, wondering, imagining, fantasizing, projecting, and then you've completely lost your self-directive will in the moment before writing. So be careful of that point, because it's a habit where we accept and allow ourselves to participate in an energy and then fuel that energy, and then before we know it, we are in various mind dimensions and possessed by and through the initial energy that we accepted and allowed ourselves to be directed by. So within writing, you can assist and support yourself with this point of remaining self-directive. The basic living statement of I decide, I direct. And therefore, within your writing, take on one point at a time. Therefore, you'll know that your writing will be in line with and sticking to this one point. And then you make sure that you do not deviate or lead yourself astray from this one point that you decided to face within and as you're writing. Because what the mind consciousness system, in relation to the relationship you have with your mind consciousness system, if you accept and allow yourself to deviate, meaning now start writing or looking at various other aspects, then your writing starts becoming about those various other aspects that you accepted and allowed yourself to deviate from, and then you completely lost track of the initial point that you're facing. It's like the way that is utilized to preoccupy you, or to have you lose sight of, or remove your attention or focus away from you yourself here. So be very watchful of that tendency within and as your participation while writing. So therefore, when you're sitting and you're deciding to write and face yourself within writing, take on one point and make sure that you stick to just that one point. Like, for example, you're facing sadness in your world and your reality, and this energetic experience of sadness has been a constant presence within your experience during your day. It's like you realize it was there and you could feel it, and you accepted and allowed yourself to be influenced by this energy today. So you basically, when you have a moment at the end of the day or in the middle of your day or whenever, and you just look at your initial experience, look at the one point that you can identify and what it is that you're experiencing. So start with an experience. What is it that you're feeling? What is the acceptance and allowance of your current self-experience? Then you write about it. Then you start opening yourself up in relation to the point of sadness. Then you look at sadness. You look at yourself in relation to the point. It's not to write about it. It's to write about you and who you are within the point of sadness. So many will, for example, make the mistake of regurgitating their mind possessive state in relation to the sadness, and through the writing actually feed the sadness instead of directing themselves within the sadness. Like, for example, say today has been a really heavy day and I'm feeling so sad, and it feels like I'm so depressed and there's like nothing I can do about it. Maybe I should do that, and I've kind of been looking at this, but it hasn't been working and I don't feel like anything. You go into a state of actual complaining about what it is that you're experiencing, and in that complaining, self-victimized state that you put yourself in within your writing, you're simply time looping yourself in that very experience. This is an example of not being self-directed in your writing, and it's an example of victimizing yourself and feeling sorry for yourself in relation to what you're experiencing. So always have a look at your writings from that perspective. Make sure that you're not going into that complaining, self-victimized state in relation to a point that you're facing. Ensure that the point that you're writing about is only one point, and that you're not deviating into other points. Like, you've decided to write about sadness, and then all of a sudden you go to writing about taking a letter from the postman when you dragged your feet out of the door, and you realize that the postman didn't look very happy as well today, and was also in a bad mood, and it looked like everything else was in a bad mood, and it was raining, and it's like the world changed into the sadness that you experienced. You start wandering off into talking about other people and other things in your world and your environment, completely shifting and projecting the actual initial point of yourself in relation to sadness. So that's another point to look at, to make sure that the point remains about self, that you don't start writing about yourself and sadness and other people, other things, other events, your whole day, your past, your future, and you start completely projecting yourself with the sadness into all aspects of your life while you're writing. So in essence, you're assisting and supporting your mind consciousness system to create yourself within this experience into various other aspects of your life, wherein you're simply layering what it is that you're experiencing instead of stopping. So those are some basic examples in relation to when you start accepting and allowing yourself to write about sadness, wherein the sadness becomes the focal point, and you start looking and seeing everything through the sadness instead of from and within yourself as starting point. So as an example, in terms of self-directive writing, in relation to using the example, the point of sadness as your experience, is you start from a question, meaning having a look at, okay, I experienced this sadness today. Where does it come from? Meaning, where did I accept and allow the sadness to exist within me? Then you can look at your day and you start writing, I looked at the sadness that I experienced, and I realized that the sadness was there when I woke up this morning. And so within realizing that it was there when I woke up this morning, I had to look at what was the first thought I had this morning, because experience or feeling as reactions, as emotion, comes from thought. So what was the thought? And I realized the thought was in relation to a projection that I actually thought this was going to be a bad day. And I realized that within accepting that thought, I accepted the feeling or emotion that goes with it, and the experience of it as sadness, and I also feel the heaviness like a burden, like I'm not going to enjoy this day. And so I realized I created this experience from that singular thought. Now that is an example of self-directed writing. Your focus is on yourself. You took the one point, you investigated its origin point, you looked at your thoughts, you looked at yourself. It's a self-reflection. Within writing, self-reflection, you're facing you, your starting point. Everything it's about you here. So when your writing is going into all sorts of directions, all over the place, kind of slightly mentioning points here and there, and then talking about this and then that, and what your opinion and idea and belief about this and about that. I mean, that's messy. That's like writing out your thought patterns, what it is that you're thinking, like writing your own conversations with your own mind. I mean, we're not interested in that, and neither should you be. I mean, that's really of no interest. It's messy, it's complicated, it only fucks with you. So just simply stop. Writing yourself to freedom is not writing about or writing your own conversations with your own mind consciousness system. Obviously, you're having enough of that. So there's no need to write it out as well. Writing yourself to freedom is writing self-directively. It's writing within facing self and having a moment of self-reflection. It's your mirror, you're writing. So utilize it constructively and specifically. Make sure that you take on one point at a time. Identify its origin point. Where did you start to experience it? What thought did you have? Then you can look at what external point instigated it. Then you can have a look with the example of the sadness. It was a rainy day, and immediately because of that, you allowed yourself to feel like dull or down. And then if you would like to explore further, you can look at your past and see if a memory comes up wherein it was a rainy day and you were a kid and you were actually fine and happy. The day didn't influence you particularly, but then you got to the breakfast table and your parents were shouting and angry at each other, and the whole day was just a mess, and that influenced you, and since then you don't like rainy days. You feel depressed or sad because that whole memory point made you feel sad. And then you accordingly, within seeing that point, you apply your self-forgiveness. You write out your self-forgiveness after your writing, and then how it is that you're going to assist and support yourself to correct this point in your practical living. Meaning, whenever it's a rainy day, you make sure that you breathe. You don't accept and allow yourself to participate in any energy that's come up within you in relation to it being a rainy day. You make sure that you're stable and constant in your participation during your day, and that you do not accept and allow yourself to be controlled by this experience of sadness. Now that whole outline is self-directive. There you've taken on one point, you have self-reflected, you faced it, you've directed yourself within it. There's insight, understanding, common sense, realization, and this is an example of what we mean by self-directed writing. So always one point at a time, because the mind consciousness system utilizes various points at a time, mixing it, intermixing it, interweaving it, and messing it up and mixing it in with various sorts of energies and things like that. So in terms of walking the mind consciousness system, standing up within it is taking it one point at a time. Later on, as you become more efficient and disciplined in your application, you'll be able to take on more points. But for now, in beginning stages with your facing yourself in your writing, take it one point at a time. Make sure that it is a facing yourself writing, that you do not regurgitate the mind consciousness system by validating it through putting yourself in a victimized point. Write it out structurally. First, you write about yourself in relation to the point, meaning defining what it is that you're experiencing, looking for its origin point. Where did it start? Then you can write out your realization within it. Then identify the memory point. Where did this situation start? Write out your insight, realization about that. Then your self-forgiveness. Then how it is that you're going to practically correct it. Then later on, as you live your practical corrective application, you can fine-tune your practical correction, how it is that you approach this whole point. And so you build on your practical living in and as reality. So here an example of how to approach writing a self-directive will. And ensuring that you do not recreate or layer even more shit within yourself in relation to the mind consciousness system. Thank you.